got Maggie 12 years ago, 12 and a half years ago, before I was involved with animal welfare at all. I didn't know anything about anything. I wasn't informed about puppy mills or pet stores. I just wasn't educated like many people. Mm-hmm. And I found her at a pet store at the mall, and she was on sale for just, $1,000. So it was such a deal, and fell in love with her big head and took her home. And as with many of the dogs that you get from pet stores, now that we're educated, she's a genetic disaster.
When we adopted our first dog, Milo, I was really struck by just how much of an individual he was. He just really had this rich emotional life too, which I was really surprised about. And I think the sheer force of his individuality really took me by surprise.
Many times they're inbred. These are puppy mill dogs that are being sold through these pet stores, and she was no different. And so at 3 years old, she tore an ACL.
And it really struck me that it would have been an absolute sin for him to have been killed in a shelter, because he was funny and loyal and tried hard and brought us really a lot of joy. And so I just felt like I wanted to do everything I could to help every other dog that I possibly could, that I could help to get out of the shelter and into a home.
Back surgery, thousands of dollars and all kinds of time trying to help her regain her ability to walk, but it became very clear that she just wasn't going to get it back. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I was actually on the board. I'd been asked to join the board for the Humane Society. They did not have a director, and they'd offered me the job before Maggie's accident. And then Maggie had her accident, and it was requiring so much intensive therapy and time to be with her, and I don't have any children. She was my baby. I thought, well, maybe I need to reconsider this. Maybe this is God's way of telling me, moving me into a place where I needed to stop and really think about that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And they actually came back to me again without even asking to see if I would reconsider. And I thought, can I take her to work with me? Will I be flexible in being able to take her to physical therapy appointments? Of course, that's what we do. That's what we're all about. And so I just took a leap of faith and thought, I'm going to do this because I need to be able to care for her, and I've never looked back. Oh, the reasons are across the board. I mean, I guess the number one reason in general for surrendering an older dog or cat is often financial hardship. They can't afford medical care or just the general care. Many times with older animals, the older animal has health issues, just like the rest of us as we get older. We have arthritis and other things that happen, and they can't afford that care. So moving is another one of the main reasons. I'm just moving where I can't have my pet. With cats, allergies is a big reason for surrender. We have divorce is another big reason. There's always, of course, behavior. That's very frustrating often, because what you find most times with dogs especially that are surrendered because there's behavior concerns is they've not once enlisted the help of a trainer. But Pappy was just a happy old black lab with the gray face that we fall in love with, and called Julie up for help, and she was certainly there as quickly as possible and won his heart. He won hers.
He could go for walks, he could run a little bit, he loved going for car rides, and he would actually race our Jack Russell to get the front seat, because that was his favorite spot. He had this habit of resting his head on the back seat, which I absolutely loved. And he used to love to drink out of the bird bath that we had in the front yard, which was just really sweet. So he was just a really sweet, lovely old dog. So we got Elliot when the Humane Society called, and they had another dog that they wanted us to come and visit with, an older black senior dog, and I brought one of our dogs over with us to do an introduction at the shelter, and that dog actually went after all and female. They had Elliot in a kennel in the back. They could not put him on the adoption floor because he was completely shut down. And he was just in the back of his kennel, not moving, not responding to anybody, just completely emotionally withdrawn. And I said, we'll take him.
An old soul that came in with the best underbite really on record to date, with those teeth that stick out with his mouth completely shut. And again, needed help with an old senior that was special, and Julie came to the rescue. Well, Max was owner surrendered at the ripe old age of 10, and I was there actually when he came in, and I remember walking into the processing area where we do vaccines, and he was just crusty, a crusty nose, and his eyes looked irritated, probably from allergies, and all kinds of lumps and bumps all over him, just typical old lab. But he looks up at you with those almost droopy basset hound kind of eyes. Tail would not stop wagging the entire time we're in there giving him vaccines. He was so happy just to have human touch, I think, in companionship, that we all immediately fell in love with him.
Max was 40 pounds overweight. He has ear infections. He also has cancer. He was despondent. Although he came in as a pretty happy dog, he became very despondent. He developed pneumonia. It's very common for dogs to get upper respiratory infections in shelters.
Call the black dog bat signal, and I sent that to Julie with a picture of Max's face in the middle of it and just said, it's time again. And sure enough, she was there in a flash and committed to fostering him through it.
Lost about 40 pounds, so he went from barely being able to walk across the room, that now he goes hiking with us 4 or 5 miles, loves it, every second of it. He's out in front like a band leader. He always wants to be in the front of the pack. He is very bonded to us. I have noticed in the last month and a half that he's stopped being so attached to me, and I noticed that he's actually becoming more attached to you, which I think is kind of interesting. I think now that he's settling in, that he's not afraid of being, abandoned again. I think he's starting to branch out a little bit more. So
Hope was a stray, definitely, and she came in the worst condition of any of the dogs that you guys have adopted to date. Another black lab with the beautiful gray face. But Hope had a mass on her back that we initially thought was maybe just a wound that had gone untreated, but we later found out, as you know, that it was a cancerous mass, and it had abscessed and was horribly infected. It's really a miracle that she was able to walk around and really keep going, probably as long as she did, with such a horrible infection. But as always, Julie came to the rescue and got her all well, and many masses later that were removed. I think Hope outlived us by, 3 years that we thought she would. Yeah. And she just kept kicking, and she was a tough, strong survivor that gave us hope, and that's how she got her name.
I love that Hope would bark at everybody and everything when we first got her. Again, she loved car rides, and she would bark out the window. And initially, it really irritated me, but I actually grew really fond of it. I thought it was funny. It was like she was saying hello to everybody that we passed. Hope had a little bit of separation anxiety, so I tended to take her with me wherever I went. And I started noticing that initially I took her because she was anxious being away from me. But towards the end, I took her because I didn't like to be away from her. She was just a real, she was like a buddy. I loved having her with me. She was fun. She loved life. There wasn't anything that she wasn't up for. Whenever we went out, she was always ready for a car ride or a walk, whatever was in front of her. And I just learned a lot about being in the moment from her, actually.
Well, I mean, adopting is the first thing. Certainly consider giving an older dog or cat a home. I think people are afraid to do it. They don't want to deal with the death of an animal too soon, and I certainly understand that. But what we hope people will keep in mind is just because a dog or cat is 6, 7, years old, they might just be in the middle of their life. I have a Chihuahua that's 17, and he is still kicking, and he thinks he is the boss of the place. So you don't count him out. It's incredibly rewarding to take one of those little gray faces home, and they're just so loyal. You know exactly what you're getting. Housebroken, crate trained. There's no surprises with an older dog or cat. This is exactly who they are and who they're always going to be. So it's just such an amazing experience to be able to save a life like that.
So fostering is the best way because you actually do get the dog out of the shelter and then into a home environment, which is the best environment for. The other thing that I would say is if you can't actually foster an animal, then you can go in and you can do enrichment programs, walking the dogs, petting the cats. The more socializing the animals have, the more adoptable they actually become.
Absolutely. I mean, the cost of care for the older animals is much greater than it is than the younger ones, which makes complete sense. It's very common for them to have arthritis or maybe some other health needs, and we will pay for that. We're a unique shelter in that we're committed to being a no-kill, but in that you also have to make the same commitment to ensure you're giving them the best quality of life and care as you can. If you're going to keep them there for an extended period of time, you need to be invested in enrichment programs and then also the medical care that they need. And so we go out and we buy glucosamine and we get the chondroitin and we give them supplements and the special foods or prescription diets that they need, and it's extremely expensive. So yes, absolutely, you can donate to help us with the care, cover the cost of care for the seniors and their special diets and needs. That would be incredibly helpful. We actually cover all the cost for fostering. We don't want there to be any barriers to prevent a great family from being able to essentially save the life of one of our animals as they're waiting for a home. So we pay for the medical care. We'll even provide the food and toys or crate, whatever you need. We are hopeful that someone will help us cover some of those expenses. We certainly appreciate if they buy the food or cover the cost of litter, and the little things add up when you have thousands of animals that come in every year. But we don't require it, so I don't want that to ever be someone's objection to helping out one of the animals.